third seal, famine, NLT. When the Lamb broke the third seal, I heard the third living being say, "Come." I looked up and saw a black horse, and its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. And I heard a voice from among the four living beings say, "A loaf of wheat bread or 3 loaves of barley will cost a day's pay. And don't waste the olive oil and wine." All praises to Yahweh, by Hashem Hamashah, Wahara Kakwadash. Double honors to the elders and the apostles of the great millstone. Shalom to the hopeful elect that seeking to be the elect of the nation of Israel. Excuse me, that's scattered abroad amongst the heathen. Some look like the heathen. Beginning with the 144,000 preachers, teachers, and prophets. Shalom. I reported on this right then. I was just reading through the headlines. The all news, all bad, all prophecy. You know, this is one of the articles. Now it says oil markets are bracing for $100 barrels and a redux of a 1970s era crisis, but 3 times the scale, analyst warns. Excuse me. This what it's going into. I typed in what's 1970s stagflation, because that's what it's going into. 1970s, remember, they said it could be 3 times as high. I got a video too. Now, what we just read in Revelation 6 is going to play out very soon. And what's causing this? War. War. Trump started this war. Okay, which is prophecy. The least of the flock, the Israelis shall draw them out. See, it's a domino effect of prophecy. Now, real quick, America, Trump already got America in $215 billion worth of debt for getting involved in this war. Trump's strikes on Iran could cost the American economy up to $210 billion, report says. That's a big hit. He already said right here, we reported on this too. Trump administration could order U.S. manufacturers to make more munitions amid Iran war. You see? Now I typed in, what's 1970 stagflation? Come on, phone. AI overview. 1970 stagflation was a severe economic crisis characterized by the rare combination of high inflation, stagnant growth, and high unemployment. We already told y'all these things were coming, right? Now here's the reports. It's coming very soon. This war is a result of it. War, as we read, was it yesterday or the day before yesterday, through the Spirit of Yahweh Shemal Shah, it breaks down the economy. All right, it causes chaos back home. It says triggered by oil supply shocks, OPEC embargo. It says and loose monetary policy. It broke the conventional economic belief that inflation and unemployment couldn't rise simultaneously. Key details of 1970 stagflation. Definition: a combination of stagflation, low GDP, gross domestic product, growth, high unemployment, and inflation, rapidly rising prices. Hyperinflation. All right? People scared to use hyperinflation. Hold on, y'all. Sorry about that. All right. It says causes: oil shocks, OPEC oil embargoes in 1973 and 1979 sharply increased energy costs. Ho. What's happening with the Strait of Hormuz? With the oil? What it's going to do to America? We brought that out. You see? It says policy mistakes. Prior Economic Policy and Employment Act of 1946 focus on low unemployment, which, when combined with supply shocks, fuel inflation. Expectations. Consumers and businesses expected future price increases, leading to a cycle of rising wages And prices, you can forget the rise in wages, but you can expect rising prices, and you can expect more people getting fired and more jobs closing down because they're not going to be able to keep up. A lot of these places not going to be able to raise their prices, and they can't make the money. They can't have the employees to pay them. They're not going to have the employees to pay them, so they're going to have to fire them. Hey, when things so high, people already can't afford it because they don't have jobs. The business is going to have to shut down. All right? And it's going to cause people to what? Rob, steal, and kill. We'll get that. Impact, reduced purchasing power for consumers, poor stock bond performance, and a decade-long economic slowdown. In other words, the dollar is going to be severely devalued, more than a hell of a lot more than what it is now. Resolution, Federal Reserve Chair Paul Volcker broke the cycle in the early 1980s by sharply increasing interest rates, which caused a recession but low inflation. Whew, finish. So this is what happened. All right, now I got a video. Now before we get that, this is what's going to be the result because it's going to happen very soon. All right, remember Trump said, hey, they could be there 4 to 6 weeks, longer if they need to. Hey, they're going to need to be there for more than 4 to 6 weeks. Iran ready. Hey, as we just read in the article right then, Trump administration could order U.S. manufacturers to make more munitions amid Iran war. You think they're going to just be there for 4 to 6 weeks? Them troops ain't coming up out of there. If they need manufacturers to make ammunition or weapons, come on, y'all. That's a major strain on the economy right there. The discussions about possibly invoking the Defense Production Act to boost munitions production come amid concerns that war with Iran could diminish U.S. stockpiles. Munition. My fault, y'all. These sounds. Weather change. Springtime. I love it. The springtime, that is. Military munition, military weapons, ammunition, equipment, stores. You see? And stores. You see that? They low. They running low. All right. So all this can cause nothing but chaos. People broke, ain't got no money, can't afford no food, resources, or none of that. What's gonna happen, y'all? Then more and more troops, the numbers are rising concerning the death of U.S. servicemen because Trump got them in this war without consulting Congress. He just went out there on the ledge and said, yeah, we're going to do this thing for Israel. The imposters. Now I think they got boots on the ground. They're sending soldiers into Ecuador. Man, a lot of troops about to die. Excuse me, they're already down. My fault. Then they said the numbers are approximately, 600, 560, something like that. See, America ain't telling nobody that. But the truth gonna come out. And then people gonna go crazy. Hey, these people don't want Trump, man. These people hate Trump. All right? Hey, we like him because of prophecy. He is our cruel Lord. All right? It says, but you see, he don't care about nobody. Just his own ego. Don't forget, he's still talking about building that ballroom. Now, this is what's going to happen soon. 2 Edges 15 and 15, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. That's guns, weapons, man. For there shall be sedition among men, and invading one another. They should not regard the kings or princes, and of course they actually stand in their power. We about to see this. These people are going to fight against each other and the government, man. These political figures. And each other. A man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. This will be so much damn chaos. Why they ain't gonna be able to go into a city? For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the house shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. It's gonna be chaos going on, a war zone in America in these cities, man. And it's gonna be curfews and checkpoints and things like that going on soon. Don't forget, April 80. They said they want these troops trained by April, man. All right, so they can be out there in these major cities. And these things are right on schedule. Hey, they could have them out there. What's this, March? Damn. Well, a quarter of the year already gone. Hell, April next month. You see? It says, for because of the we hit that verse 19, a man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy thy house with the sword and spoil their goods, meaning take your shit. Because of the lack of bread, they're hungry, they're thirsty. They need resources, they need medicine, they need batteries. And for great tribulation, the hardships, Jacob's trouble, the worst time ever since it was a nation, it's going to be that bad. All right? So all these things are coming together. And what's causing it? This war. This war is causing it. Trump has caused it. And his administration is still backing him up. Now, I'm watching a video. I'll pause it because I had to take a shower, man. It hadn't been too long I got in. Now, I'll pause it at the 5-minute mark. All right, man. That will help. Right here, it's I'm gonna watch this. It says President Trump hosts tech leaders as Iran tension rise. It says President Donald Trump met with tech leaders amid ongoing strikes on Iran. Trump spoke as U.S. forces ramp up the strikes in the Middle East. Now, why is he talking to these tech leaders as the tension rise? Because they're about to bring in this digital system, man. They're about to bring in this mark of the beast. Now, I got to watch the video, and I'm going to watch it. It's not going to be in this video, but it's going to be in the next one. That's if any information need to be brought out. And we'll, of course, we roll by with the Holy Spirit, and we'll go from there. But just to show you that.
Dealings with Spain, first of all.
Right here.
This to the moon is not necessary.
It says, are we headed for 1970s style stagflation? You damn right. This is the result of war. I'm gonna play it all 18 minutes. Hopefully we won't hit no strike. I'm gonna put the link to this video in the description box. This is George Gammon. Alright, this is George Gammon. I've been subscribed to him. Are we headed for 1970s stagflation? Well, we just read to you what it meant. And then, like the article said, real quick. Hey, this is that black horse, y'all. At its highest point. Once it play out. My fault, where we at? Right here. It says, check that out right there. It says ISIS surveillance web tracks everyone, including you. We already know that. Check that out later. I forgot. My fault, y'all. Okay, yeah. My fault. As the article reads, oil markets are bracing for $100 barrels and a redux of a 1970s era crisis, but 3 times the scale. Analyst warns, meaning 3 times as bad. Now let's play this video. So, he talking about $200. He said, hey, oil prices could go up to $200. Could go up to $200 a barrel. That's what he's going to say. But real quick, let's see. Let's get the oil calculator. Crude oil calculator. Conversion. CME group. Let's hit this joint real quick. You know, it's always good to play with numbers, man. If it's hold on, what's it? The value of $200. The value of $200 a barrel. Price move on this contract. Let me see. Let me just accept that. Let me see. I don't like this calculator. Let me pause it. So I typed in what would be the cost of gas. Crude oil was $200 a barrel. Says AI overview. If crude oil reaches $200 a barrel, gasoline prices in the United States will likely soar to over $5 to $6 plus per gallon. All right, that's per gallon. Now that depends on which region you are, which state, and that's for regular. With 42 gallons in a barrel and high refining transportation costs, every $1 change in oil adds about 2.4 cents to gallon to gasoline, making $200 oil a catalyst for major price spikes. So you're looking at from $5 to $6 plus per gallon. So let's say you got a 23-gallon tank. Let's do some math. So if you got a 23-gallon tank, let's just say $6. You use a regular times. Then you add the tax to it. I'm assuming. So let's say 609, 610. Well, we'll just leave it at $6. Let's say $6. Like I said, from $5 to $6 plus per gallon, so it'll be higher. So if you do premium, this is what, about another $2, $3 higher. Diesel, oh shit, that's like another what, $4 higher. Now maybe not that much, but damn near. $6 times, let's say you got a car. Most cars like 23-gallon tanks. So it will cost you $138 to fill up a 23-gallon tank. Most trucks, 26 gallons. Hold on. $6 a gallon times 26 gallons. So if you got a truck and you got 26 gallons, it's $156. Damn. At $6 a gallon. Now let's say you got to fill your car every week. So $156 times 4. Shit, that's a goddamn car payment, man. Alright? That's a damn car payment, man. That's $642 a month in gas. Now that's just on the low end. And you got to fill your car 4 times a week. At the end of the week, you can forget about, I'm going on vacation. I'm going here. I'm going to go splurge. I'm going to go drive around, cruise around the city. I'm going to go hang out. Like the hell you is. Like the hell you are. Hey, niggas going to be driving with a purpose. There's going to be a reason behind the shit people do now. If it go up to $200 a barrel. And again, that's just regular. And that's just a low end. All right, now he gonna speak on it. Why my phone keep doing this? Let me see. Let's play the video.
Races to the moon is not necessarily.
I'll put this in this video in the description box so you can watch it. Again, are we headed for 1970s style stagflation?
Chaos in the Middle East is sending oil prices higher and higher and higher. Some experts are saying we could see $200 a barrel oil.
The price of U.S. crude oil soared more than 10%.
The front end of crude could go much, much higher. So does this mean we're headed for a 1970s style oil shock stagflation in 2026? I'm going to
remember, Yahweh Shah said we enter into a time a worst time ever since it was ever since it was a nation. So it's going to be worse than 1970 style stagflation. Like the article said, 3 times as bad.
Feel the answer to that question in 3 simple fast steps. Step number 1, let's go over how energy is the economy. That's for sure. And by the way, if you've been living under a rock, what's really sending oil prices to the moon is not necessarily supply issues, but transportation issues. Because in retaliation, Iran is threatening or actually closing the Straits of Hormuz, which means all that oil can't get out. And this is why a lot of experts are saying that we could see 100 plus, and some experts are even going as far as saying $200 a barrel. But now let's go ahead and look.
And don't forget, if you say, well, Trump took over Venezuelan oil, well, they still got to jack the price up. All right, and they're gonna be rationing. They're gonna have to ration. They're gonna have to ration here. That rationing coming, man. That rationing is coming with oil, with food, with everything. Okay, that's why you can have blackouts and brownouts. Okay.
An actual price chart of oil and see what's been happening lately. So this goes all the way back to October of 2025. On the left, we go from 55 a barrel up to 80. See, we're kind of churning around here. We actually get to a low right around 55 and call it December. And then it gradually trends up. And then we get this conflict in the Middle East in Iran. And it goes straight up, parabolic, to the point where we are now, right around $77, $78 a barrel. And who knows what the price will be when you guys watch this video. It could be much, much higher depending on how this escalates in the Middle East. So then we have to ask the question, what does this actually mean for the economy? So what we have to realize is not only that energy is the economy, but it goes into almost every single product we use. As an example, well, this dry erase board pen, I guarantee you, has a lot of petroleum products in it. So if oil is trading at $120 a barrel, I guarantee you this pen is going to be a lot more expensive to purchase. And that's if the transportation costs remain the same, which they won't. Let me show you what I'm referring to. So let's say that oil, let's say we go back in time when oil was $60 a barrel. Let's say you're paying $3 at the pump. Now, I know what you're paying. We're just using these numbers for the sake of the example. Paying $3 at the pump. Okay, great. Well, the trucking company that's transporting the goods to Walmart, they're going to go ahead and load up on fuel. So they're charging $30 to transport those goods. And Walmart has to pay those transportation costs. They're baked into the price of the stuff they buy. So say the stuff that's in this truck, they pay $300 for. And then they go ahead and mark it up to make that profit. So they sell the goods that are in this truck for $450 to the consumer, which, by the way, is already pinched. Let's remember that the labor market is deteriorating. That's not George Gammon's opinion. That's the opinion of the actual data. It takes us right back to stagflation, when you have a deteriorating labor market, potentially unemployment going up, while at the same time you have high rates of consumer price inflation. Oh, but wait, there is more. You see, this is with gas at $3 a barrel, oil trading at, let's say, 60. What happens if it goes up to 80, 90, 100, 200? It goes completely off the charts. It goes off my whiteboard. Well, then you're not going to be paying $3 at the pump, I can assure you. So let's delete these numbers really quick and go over some numbers that we would likely see if we get, let's just say, 100 plus, 150 plus oil. So now all of a sudden you're paying, and again, these aren't exact numbers, just using these for easy math. You're paying $10 a gallon. Just think what the trucking company would charge now. They got to pay $10 a gallon to fill up their truck. So before, what were they charging? Like $30 for this transport? Now, let's say it goes up to 100. Oops. There we go. What's Walmart going to pay? Well, they were paying $300, so now they're going to be paying, let's say, $1,000.
Shit.
And they're going to charge their markup at, let's say, 50%. So instead of the average Joe paying $450 for those goods, Now, all of a sudden, he's going to be paying $1,500. And now he's really pissed, as you can imagine. So it's very easy to see how higher energy prices can rip through the economy and cause higher prices in almost everything you buy daily. But to answer the question, are we headed for an oil shock stagflationary environment like we saw in the 1970s? We have to think about the demand side of the equation. This is key. So if the prices go up for everything, what on earth happens to demand? We're going to go into that right now. Step number 2. Now let's get into some charts that I think will paint a very clear picture as to whether or not we should expect to see an oil shock stagflation in 2026. Let's dive right in. First and foremost, I want to go over a chart of M2 money supply going all the way back to the infamous 1970s. So M2 money supply is represented by this black line. And by the way, consumer prices represented by this red line. So what I want you to notice first is that we really don't see a flattening. Well, we see it slightly here in the recession. Let's just say 74, but it's still going up. It's still going up. And then especially once we get into the mid-1970s, going into 1980, it pretty much goes up in a straight line. I mean, there's almost no deviation whatsoever. But even in this part where it's slightly more flat, the money supply is still increasing. This is very, very important. And you see that over the decade of the 1970s, the money supply, as measured by M2, went up by a whopping 154%, roughly. And compounded, we had inflation of over 100%. Now let's move on to another 10-year period. Let's do 2005, 2015. You guys know what happened in the middle there. It was something called the GFC. So right around 2009, look at what happens to M2 money supply. It really flattens out for a couple years. It barely goes up. And for that 10-year span, we have M2 go up by 75%, inflation by a tame 25% compared to the 1970s. And if we fast forward to the cerveza sickness, we'll call it 2016 to where we are today, 2026, so we've got the cerveza sickness in the middle, we see a similar dynamic where, yes, we had massive money supply growth when the stimmies were abundant and the Fed was doing QE and everyone is drawing down their line of credit. That definitely contributed to it because people thought the world was coming to an end, so they need to load it up on as much cash to make sure that they could weather the storm. But then what has happened since, let's just say 2022, money supply growth is pretty much flat. I mean, look at this chart. In fact, we declined there quite substantially for a couple years. And this is very, very important. Now, I've selected these time frames for a reason. Now let's go back in time and look at a chart of oil during the 1970s. So here we see this huge oil shock, let's say 1973 to 1974, where look at this, August 73, trading at, call it $4, and it goes straight up to 10. Holy cow, it more than doubles in just a few months. So a lot of people say this is why we saw such massive amounts of inflation in the 1970s. I would disagree. And I'm going to connect the dots for you here in a moment. So now let's fast forward to 2005, 2015. And look at 2007. Oil's trading right around $60. But we fast forward to 2008 and it's trading at 140. So it went up just as much, if not more in percentage terms, than what we saw in the 1970s. Now, granted, in the 1970s, it went up at a faster pace. This is true. But the price of oil went up to a similar degree all the same. Now, did we see 1970s style inflation throughout the 2010s? No. Now, the CPI understated inflation, but it wasn't at the level of the 1970s. Now, remember, what was a key component here? M2 money supply growth during this time was a lot lower. Now, let's fast forward to another increase in oil prices, cerveza sickness, and you can see at the lows there, I think that's a little disingenuous because of what was happening, but let's say $40 a barrel, it pretty much goes straight to 120 or so, and that of course is due to Russia invading Ukraine. So a similar percentage move, in fact that's a massive move in percentage terms, but did we see the 1970s style inflation after 2022? And the answer is no. We've actually seen disinflation where the CPI has gone from, call it 9% all the way down to where it is today, hovering around 2.4. So the overarching point here is there's been many times where we've seen these big moves in the price of oil, but it hasn't led to 1970s style stagflation. I think the key variable there is money supply growth, which over the last couple of years has been flat, if not down, when you go back to 2022. So this gives us the answer as to what would likely happen in the real economy in terms of aggregate demand if we do see $100, $150, or $200 a barrel oil. Step number 3. So are we headed for a 1970s style oil shock stagflation? My answer is no.
You crazy.
But I think we could be headed for a 2008 style GFC 2.0. Let me show you what I'm referring to. I've got a couple charts here. They're not actual charts. I just drew them up here to give you a visual representation as to why I think there's a higher probability we go into an economic recession, a disinflation, or even a deflationary recession like we saw in 2008, 2009 versus what we saw in the 1970s. Okay, so in the 1970s, like we just saw in step number 2, money supply growth continued to go higher and higher and higher. We'd have a little bit of flattening, but it was still going up. We had oil go way up, as we know, but then demand pretty much stayed the same. That's why you saw the inflation rates stay at a very high level. But I think the reason demand stayed the same, might have gone down slightly, maybe have gone up slightly during times, was because the banking system was creating a lot of money. At the end of the day, they're the ones that print the money. It isn't necessarily the Fed. So they're creating all of this money supply growth that's going into the real economy, supporting wages. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about, income and wages. So I've got the same little, I don't know, I've got my artwork up here from step number 1. I redrew the numbers so you could actually read them, but I've added this 450 to 1500. Why did I do that? Did that remind you of the earlier price? No. Let's just assume these are the pissed off average Joe's wages. Okay? So we go through the price spike in oil, that takes gas up to $10. Trucking company has to pay $100. Walmart has to pay $1,000 to get the goods. They have to charge the average Joe and Jane's $1,500. But let's assume, because we've got the money supply growth, their wages go up to $1,500. Now they're still going to be pissed off because prices are going up, but it's not going to impact aggregate demand that much because their wages are going up. But let's say their wages stay at $450. Now what happens to aggregate demand? Boom. And this is exactly what we saw in the oil price spike of 2008. And what I mean by that is the oil prices going up was the straw that broke the camel's back as far as the economy, and that crushed aggregate demand to a point where it brings on a recession, and that leads to actual lower oil prices because although supply might be low, demand goes down even further. If demand goes down further, then the oil price gradually comes down over time. Remember, the cure for high prices are high prices.
I mean, you get the point. You get the point. Yeah. Let's get real quick. We'll close out. How Yahweh Shai said it's gonna be the worst time ever since it was a nation. To that time. All this is going to the stress and strain, man. All right, that Revelation 6 that we read. Matthew chapter 24, verse 21, Yahweh shall speak, for then shall be great tribulation, affliction, trouble, hard times, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. You see?
Ladies, let me show.
And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. So, hey, you want to get a good example on how things are going to be very soon, you look at what's going on in Venezuela, man. How their currency trash, you know? And what they can and can't get with that currency, man. All right? Well, yeah, I just wanted to hit this real quick through the spirit of power. How about Shema? So I'm going to watch this video with Trump host tech leaders as Iran changes ride and see what he say. Hopefully something good come up out of it. But stay prayed up in the names of how about Shema Shai. And hey, just look forward to things going through the roof very soon because of this war. All right? Stay prayed up in the names of how about Shema Shai. Shalom.